From the land of frozen lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. Well, Valentine's Day has come and gone.
Yes.
The polar vortex apparently has come and gone. We're out of the deep freeze. NBA All-Star festivities in San Francisco now in the rearview mirror, and that means back to regular season action, and the Minnesota Timberwolves will pick up play again in Houston. And, you know, they're currently a playoff team if the season were to end today, but they're a lower-rung team. They wouldn't have any home court in round one, so if they want to move up the ladder, they've got work to do.
Yeah, they want to avoid being a play-in team. Not to go to number 11, but they want to be 6 or higher. And they're right on the heels of the Clippers as we enter play this weekend. So, anything is possible. I think as we had Leah B. Olson on a couple weeks ago on this very show, and she talked about the fact that they have the talent. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but they got two things working against them. A, they're in the West.
Yep.
B, they've had injuries. Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, the two guys they got in the Karl Anthony Towns trade, have both been on the shelf. Don't know when or if these guys are going to return soon. I think that they'll both be back at some point. And then you mentioned the All-Star game or All-Star games or festivities, whatever that was last Sunday. Anthony Edwards selected to start. Did not even play. He tweaked a groin muscle, was afraid, didn't get a chance to warm up before the game, decided not to play. Now, that might be of concern as well because we've talked about this before with regard to Anthony Edwards. This isn't a guy that needs load management. He plays. I have rarely, if ever, seen him just take a day off, sit there with his street clothes on. That was a Karl Anthony Towns thing. We saw a fair amount of that in his tenure.
He's not wired that way.
No.
I mean, he wants to be out there on the floor. He wants to entertain. He's very fan-friendly, and that's just the way he is. You talk about tweaking a groin or whatever the actual injury is. Those can be slow to heal, and he's so explosive.
Right.
That's part of his game. So he needs especially the lower body to be functioning just the right way so he can, fly through the air and make those acrobatic jams and, do everything that he does that makes him one of the young and up-and-coming stars in the NBA. But you're right about the West. It's full of landmines. I mean, there's some very good teams in the Western Conference. If you win 2 or 3 in a row, you can move up 2 or 3 slots. On the flip side, you lose 2 or 3 straight, and you're down there wondering if you're going to be in a play-in scenario. So they've got the Rockets. I know Oklahoma City is here again on Sunday night. They beat OKC last week, and that's a very good team, as we know, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and that group, and Chet Holmgren from Minnehaha Academy.
Right.
But they got to keep winning. I mean, they got to keep their foot on the gas pedal.
Yeah. And folks talk about, the Dallas Mavericks, of course, they have Kyrie Irving, but they gave away, if you will, Luka Doncic. So now the Lakers have Luka and LeBron together. I think that is going to be a top 6 team in the West. I don't think there's any question at this point unless one of those two gets hurt. And then Dallas, I think Dallas is still going to be a factor. They're still going to be one of these teams fighting from 6 to 10, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Anthony Davis, he's not a chump. This is a very good player, but he's injured.
Always.
That's the problem. So they got to get AD playing. And, I saw the other day Kyrie Irving was telling the fans down there in the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth, and they're angry. They did not want to see Luka go.
You're right.
He said, well, give us a chance, lay off us a bit, and we'll see what happens. But to your point on the L.A. Lakers, if Luka and LeBron find that chemistry and cohesion, and the rest of that group can feed off of it, they're going to be an interesting team to watch. And they seemingly have gotten better after that trade. But I don't know. Oklahoma City still looks doggone good. I wouldn't discount Denver.
No.
And Memphis.
Yeah. Well,
and even Houston.
All these teams in the West. I mean, anything is possible with this Western Conference this year. There's no doubt. I mentioned, we talked a little bit about the All-Star games. I know you didn't partake in any of it. I'm not sure what I saw. They did some surveys with the players afterwards, what they liked, what they didn't like. The players actually liked this setup where they had like a mini tournament and picked teams, and they let the young guys in. They had the rising stars play in this mini tournament they had with the All-Stars. It was all right. I mean, the quality of play was certainly better than it's been the last couple of years, but that was a very low bar. I mean, it has been horrible. Unwatchable almost like Pro Bowl football bad, really.
Well, the NBA is trying to figure out what to do with their All-Star break. Give them credit. They're experimenting. They're tinkering. They're tweaking. I'm not a huge fan of it, not a huge fan of what the NFL does with the Pro Bowl games. But I would say this, Minneapolis, try to bring it here. It was here once,
1994.
It would be a huge deal if you ever get it back here. But then again, when I think about the weather we had this past week, can you imagine these All-Stars? And if Charles Barkley doesn't like San Francisco, what would he say about Minneapolis when it's minus 18 at night?
I've got news for you. It's not coming back here until A-Rod and Mark Lowry get their new arena.
That's going to be part of the pitch.
You know that's it. You're right. That's when we'll get our next All-Star game.
I got news for those two. Get the NBA Finals here first.
Yes,
how about that?
Please. All right. More to come. We're going to talk to the son of Tony O.
10K takes your Timberwolves ticket.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
True love stories never have endings. However, they do have beginnings. Congratulations on your engagement. Begin planning your special wedding day at weddingsoflakeville.com, where you'll discover over a dozen reception venues accommodating up to 600 guests. Go to weddingsoflakeville.com and choose settings that are intimate, serene, outdoors, historical, state-of-the-art, traditional, and even country club style. Feel confident. Weddingsoflakeville.com provides recommendations from businesses we know and trust.
Welcome back. 10,000 takes, and mid-February, or mid to late February as the case is now, means spring training is underway. Pitchers, catchers, everybody has now reported. So I figure we talk a little bit of baseball, but a little different twist this time. A guy who is the son of one of the Twins' all-time greats, Ric Oliva, the son of Tony Oliva, who of course was inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, is authoring a book, a children's book, about the great Tony O. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. Give me the whatever it was that sparked you to write this book about your dad's life and times.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me on your show. So when my oldest son was born 20 years ago, I got the idea. I said, you know what, my dad's stories that he'd always tell me when I was growing up, I loved listening to him tell those stories, and they're really inspiring stories. And I thought, I want to have a book of that for my kids. Well, I kind of procrastinated a little bit, and then 1 year turned into 10 years, turned into 20 years, and here we are. We're finally getting the vision for this book realized. Partnered with Wise Inc. Media here in Minneapolis, and Kevin Cannon, who illustrated, if you're familiar with the Joe Schmidt book about Joe Mauer.
Right.
It's the same illustrator and same publisher. But the stories that really inspired me were when my dad would talk about growing up in Cuba, and they go fishing with just a stick with a string and a hook on it. Because they didn't have fishing poles, they didn't have rods and reels. There was no Dick's Sporting Goods back in the 1940s in Cuba. When he would play baseball, they were poor. They didn't have equipment, so they would just make bats. He'd say, I'd go cut a branch off of a tree, and we'd get a rock or a cork or something, roll it with tape, and that became our baseball. Move on, and he gets the call to come to the United States. He actually gets released from the team. A lot of people don't realize that the Twins actually released him after 5 days, I believe it was, in Florida. But he came in April of 1961. And if you remember, 1961 in April, that was the Bay of Pigs. And so my dad was stranded. He couldn't get home. So hearing those stories of, okay, well, what do you do? He had a friend that convinced the team to give him another chance. He stayed on, got a spot on the team, and the rest is history. So those were the types of stories that I just thought really lent themselves to a children's book on how your beginnings don't define your endings, and how through perseverance and grit, and you can find a way. And so the title of the book is No Hay Problema, the amazing story of Tony Oliva. No hay problema meaning no problem in Spanish. It doesn't matter what obstacle you're faced with. If you face it with a positive attitude and persistence, you can overcome it.
Yeah, and I think, Rick, anybody who's been around your father, I mean, Tonio has embraced being a baseball ambassador and being around the Twins. I know he's in spring training right now as we speak in Florida. I've seen him interact with all generations of fans at Target Field, young on up. And he's never afraid to shake the hand, take the photo with a fan. He really seems to love the fans, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. He is a people person. He will always take time to talk to anybody that wants to talk. And it's funny because sometimes people will ask me, they say, does it bother him that people stop him and ask for autographs? So I say, you know what? If he didn't want to be recognized, he wouldn't walk around with a Twins cap and a Twins jacket and a Twins shirt and his World Series ring. He loves it, and he knows that the reason why he's had a career in Minnesota that's lasted 64 years now is because of the fans. And so he really appreciates every single person that comes up and shakes his hand, because he knows that's why he's still here.
Why a children's book?
The main reason for it being a children's book is because this one isn't really baseball definitely is a central topic of the book, because it's he's a baseball player, but it's more than just facts and figures about his career. You can go on YouTube and find videos of him playing. You can type in Tony Oliva stats and you can find blogs, and there's other books there's 2 biographies that have already been written about him. And so from that perspective, I figure that's already been done. And so what I wanted to do is inspire the next generation of kid that might be looking at the baseball diamond and saying, yeah, but I don't even have a glove. How am I going to be a baseball player? Well, you know what? My dad got signed as a professional baseball player. He didn't own a glove either. When he signed his contract, his dad traded a pig so that way he could have a glove when he came to the United States. I mean, it's just these crazy stories, right? But, I wanted to really inspire people, young people, and just saying, oh, yeah, he hit this many hits and his batting average was this. And, to me, that it was better as an illustrated children's book.
There's that old song, Mickey, Willie, and the Duke. I think if you follow baseball, you know about Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Duke Snyder. In Minnesota, I think the Twins had their own troika, Harmon, Tonio, and Rodney. I mean, enough said, right? Those 3 together, same lineup, and became close friends. I really feel like they got along.
Oh, absolutely. Rod Carew is still one of my dad's best friends. They're only separated by distance, but now that they're both down in Florida, they'll be there, hanging out every single day. I actually, as a lead up to releasing the book, I spent about a half hour interviewing Rod about my dad, and he says, Tony will give you the shirt off his back if you need it. And just the respect that they have for each other. He tells the story, like literally when Rod came to try out for the Twins the first time, they didn't have a uniform for him. And so my dad said, well, go ahead and wear one of mine. And so, they're really, really that close. My dad taught Rod how to tie his first tie. It's amazing.
Wow.
The relationship.
Your dad's career ended prematurely because of the knee injuries. Has he ever talked to you about that? And did he have misgivings about not being able to, continue to play that you know of or that he talked about?
Yeah, that comes up a lot, and people will always say, Tony, it's too bad you weren't playing today, because if you were playing today, the surgeries that they did on your knees back then, they were so primitive. Now they would have had you back in the lineup in 6 weeks, and you would have been fine, and you could have kept playing. And he has such a great attitude about it. He always says, you know what? If I was playing today, I'd still be in Cuba. I wouldn't even have the opportunity to be here. And so he doesn't like to dwell on what could have been. He always likes to keep this attitude of, I'm grateful and thankful for what I have and what God has, excuse me, what God has given me the ability to do. So he's happy that he even had a chance. He says, I wasn't even supposed to be here at all. He says, the team let me go. He said, it's because of the Bay of Pigs that I was even here to begin with, because he got stranded. So, yeah.
And on the flip side, and the knee injuries were unfortunate, but Tony O played when the DH began in the early 1970s, and all of a sudden you had a newly created position that a guy who battled injuries, all he had to do was hit. I think he hit the first ever home run by any DH in the history of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I read that. I wasn't alive yet, so I don't know. I didn't see it. But yeah, I read that. Yeah, he hit the first home run. Yeah, it's almost like it was a position made for a guy like him, right? It's like, well, he can't chase down fly balls in the field, but he can still swing a bat and get on base and drive in runs.
Yeah. The Hall of Fame call that he finally did get. He didn't get it, in his regular years of eligibility, the 25 years, but he did get it through the Veterans Committee finally, and it went on for a long time. How difficult was that for the family and for your dad? And then eventually, how the jubilation that came as a result of getting the Hall call.
Yeah, it was amazing. My dad, he always said, I figure I'd probably get in one day. I just hope that I'm alive so I can enjoy it. And one of the things with and I talk about this in the preface to the book, where we had sort of moved on. The idea is, well, he hasn't gotten a hit in 45 years. Like, what else are they going to look at that's going to make them want to induct him? So we had kind of said, well, yeah, a lot of people think that he deserves to be in, but whatever. So to us, it wasn't even a big deal. We didn't even really get disappointed anymore, because it was just kind of normal. Like, yeah, he didn't get in again. So then to finally be sitting there, and at like 20 to 5, the phone rings from a number that no one recognizes, and it's, Jane Clark from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, is this Tony Oliva? Yes. This is Jane Clark from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. You've been inducted. Congratulations. It was like, oh my gosh, everyone starts crying, and we're just, jumping up and down and hugging each other. It was like a 1,000-pound weight was lifted off your back that you didn't even know existed. It was so amazing.
And maybe your dad truly is Mr. Twin. He came in under the Calvin Griffith regime, went through the poll ads, and soon it looks like there will be a new ownership group. And if they have any brains, they're going to keep Tony O around.
He was there at the first World Series, and he coached in the next two. I think he's the only one that was in all three Twins World Series. So, he's been there forever. I don't know, and I'm not saying that just because he's my dad. I don't know that the Twins have had a better ambassador. They've had, like, Harmon Killebrew and Rod Carew got in the Hall of Fame before he did, but my dad has been around consistently. Lived in Minnesota and gone to the ballpark every day for 64 years.
Yeah, well, a great tribute. Well, Rick, we appreciate you coming on the show and talking about your book, No Hay Problema, and we wish you well with it. And we'll post some info so that folks know where to get the book.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity, and glad to come back anytime.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. He's Ric Oliva, the son of the great Tony O, right here on 10,000 Takes. Eric and I will be back with more after this time out. Stay with us.
From the Iron Range down to the Prairie Lands, over to Lakes Country, south to the Twin Cities, and back up the North Shore, the game of basketball has always been more than just a game in Minnesota. Now in its 35th year, the MYS Grade State Basketball Championships have become a cornerstone of Minnesota youth basketball. Representing nearly 180 Minnesota Youth Basketball Alliance member associations, Grade State showcases teams and communities from all corners of the state. It's a tradition that has inspired generations of players, coaches, and communities. 645 girls teams, 1,029 boys teams, and over 15,000 players. From local courts to the national stage, our athletes continue to leave their mark. Together, we honor the past, celebrate the present, and inspire the future. Minnesota made for 35 years. See you on the court.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
True love stories never have endings. However, they do have beginnings. Congratulations on your engagement. Begin planning your special wedding day at weddingsoflakeville.com, where you'll discover over a dozen reception venues accommodating up to 600 guests. Go to weddingsoflakeville.com and choose settings that are intimate, serene, outdoors, historical, state-of-the-art, traditional, and even country club style. Feel confident. Weddingsoflakeville.com provides recommendations from businesses we know and trust.
We are 10,000 Takes. We're not in Florida. We're in the Twin Cities, but the Twins are underway down in Florida, spring training. Do you have any thoughts about how you think things will or should go this year for the 2025 version of this team that kind of bottomed out in September last year?
Yeah, the Twins are one of 30 teams right now, very optimistic. Sunshine and smiles in spring training. That's what it's all about. Well, I don't think it's all gloom and doom. I mean, they had a disastrous September. They were historically bad. It was a collapse. They cratered. We know that. But if they can bottle up what they did in the first few months of the season and bring that back and learn how to finish and keep Carlos Correa and Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton on the field for most of the time and get Joe Ryan back in that rotation, there's no reason they can't compete in the AL Central. It is not the payroll division of Major League Baseball.
No.
I don't know if anybody cares in this division when it comes to writing a check.
No.
So I think there's room for optimism, but hey, it's the Twins.
Yeah. Optimism to compete in the Central, but not necessarily to compete for a championship.
Don't buy World Series tickets just yet.
No, please don't do that. Okay, I know the Twins are going down in Florida, and we certainly could spend a lot more time on the Twins, and we will in the upcoming weeks to come here. But somehow the Vikings still managed to get into the discussion, year round. And let's blame part of that on Justin Jefferson. He threw something out the other day. He says, hey, Myles Garrett, who is the perennial Pro Bowler, probably a Hall of Famer someday, playing the defensive line for the Cleveland Browns. He wants out of Cleveland.
Can't blame him.
Can't blame them. They were terrible this year. They were good last year, but this past season they were terrible. And Justin Jefferson campaigning to get him here.
Yeah, the Shield, as always, bigfooting the other sports. Don't forget your combine starts in a few days down in Indianapolis.
Combine.
Well, here's the key with Myles Garrett. Why does he want out of Cleveland? Because he doesn't think they're ready to compete for a Super Bowl. So he wants to go to a winner. And Justin Jefferson's pitch is, hey, we're 1 or 2 or 3 pieces away from maybe getting to that Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And he's probably right, depending on what they bring back. Who knows? But I think to have a guy like Justin Jefferson recruit him openly is huge. Don't forget, Detroit might try to grab him, NFC North opponent, pair him up with Aiden Hutchinson. You don't want that if you're a Minnesota Viking fan, or specifically whoever your quarterback is.
Oh, yes. By the way, you think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Vikings quarterback?
Oh, who knows?
Never know.
He's a free agent.
All right.
Like Sam Darnold.
Yes. Takes of the day coming up next. You won't want to miss the hat. We are 10,000 Takes. Stay with us.
Finding the ideal place to stay is important for business travelers. Lakeville, Minnesota is conveniently located off I-35, just south of the Twin Cities, with a variety of hotel choices. Lakeville offers convenient amenities such as shopping, walking trails, golf, and more. Our unique meeting spaces, historic downtown, live music, and over 60 dining options are sure to impress. Book your next stay in Lakeville and experience convenience, comfort, and quality. Find your perfect hotel at visitlakeville.org.
Wally and Eric from 10,000 Takes here in the land of lakes. And if you want sports of all sorts, check us out. We cover all the bases, all the teams in the great state of Minnesota.
Vikings, Twins, Wild, Gophers, Timberwolves, Loons, you name it, we do it. Late night Saturday night on Fox 9 Plus and on the Fox local app.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10K Takes on television as we wrap up yet another episode. And, of course, it's time for Takes of the Day. Big shout-out to the viewers in the Twin Ports and the Twin Cities up and down that I-35 corridor.
Yes.
They're going to find out if you're an angry American, cranky Yankee, giddy Guardian, happy camper. What is it today?
Well, as you know, U.S. and Canada in that Four Nations tournament that the NHL is putting on or put on, played their first game this past Saturday, and the U.S. wins the game by a score of 3-1. They score a late goal to expand the lead. It was 2-1 late, but they win the hockey game, which, by the way, broke a 17-game losing streak for the U.S. against Canada in games against best versus best. So as I was listening to the radio driving home from Green Bay, of all things, Sunday, I happened upon a commentator who came on and was talking about how it was the booing of the U.S. national anthem that got those players fired up. That's why the U.S. won that hockey game over Canada. It had nothing to do with anything else. It was all about USA, USA, and the fans in Canada booing the national anthem. Now, mind you, they're booing the anthem. They're not booing the players. Heck, a lot of those players play for the teams that they cheer for, right? Montreal and Vancouver.
Hellebuck and Winnipeg.
You got it. Winnipeg, and go on and on and on. Well, anyway, turns out that that's not the case. As a matter of fact, all those fights you saw at the beginning of the game, Matthew and Brady Tkachuk and JT Miller for the U.S., they instigated those on purpose. They had a little group chat going earlier in the day, and they said, hey, let's get our team fired up. We've lost 17 in a row to these Canucks. We want to beat them this time around, so let's get things going right away. So they took the gloves off early. That is what inspired them. It wasn't the booing of the national anthem. They could care less. They want to play hockey. A lot of these guys are teammates in the NHL, so forget all that. Pin it on hockey, not politics.
All right, let's check out the mood meter. Oh, he's an angry American. Mm-hmm. Where on the other side of the border, you'd be a cranky Canadian.
Yes, I would.
Guess it depends on where you land.
Yes.
All right, well, my take of the day, I'm going to give more kudos and props to Saquon Barkley. As we know, he's part of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, so after the Eagles win the title, the Tonight Show NBC invites Barkley and Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, to come down. Cool, right?
Right.
Well, Barkley says, I will show up as long as I can bring my offensive line. Boy, that is a shrewd move by Barkley. You got to take care of those guys who road grade you, open those holes for you. And so they showed up as well. And so I thought, well, how can he top that? Well, they had the parade, right? Last week in Philadelphia. And Barkley's walking up and down and mingling with fans as the parade stuff goes by. And he sees the Eagles ball boy, grabs the ball boy, puts him on the parade truck or whatever they were on, and brings him along for the ride. Of course, it went viral. So the legend of Saquon Barkley continues to grow. Move over, Rocky Balboa. Move over, Joe Frazier, Charles Barkley, Dr. J, Mike Schmidt. It's Saquon Barkley's town in Philadelphia these days.
Boy, that's for sure.
All right, we got to go. Thanks so much for tuning us in. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.